In this lesson we're going to look at the bass for La La La. The bass is your typical synthesized bass sound, some kind of simple lead. Now in Logic, the instrument that I would use for this would generally be the ES2. However, I did manage to find an almost perfect replica with a bit of tweaking of EQ. There was almost perfect replica. If you come down to synths and then go into basses, it's this one here, the synthetic double bass. Now it's actually done on Sculpture. This isn't my first choice for bass sounds at all. Like I say, my first choice is normally the ES2, and if you're on Cubase or something like that, you're probably going to go straight to Hallion and find yourself a nice little lead bass sound in there. But this one is almost identical match. I just literally breeze through them, and at the moment what I'm trying to do for you guys is just find an out-of-the-box solution rather than too much manipulation. I guess it gets kind of daunting when you have to start mixing things up, and that's, I guess, why I normally wouldn't choose Sculpture, because if there was more work to be done, the actual manipulation process is quite a lot more intense. It's not your conventional synthesizer, whereas the ES2 is just slightly, and the ES1 is slightly more straightforward to understand once you understand how synthesis works. But that being said, it's a good synth to use, and this synthetic double bass is my preferred favourite. Like I say, I've had to tweak the EQ ever so slightly, so I've dropped the boost that it was telling me to have, and I've kind of accentuated this bass region, and I might tweak that a bit further. I might put a little bit more boost around the 100 and probably drop it somewhere between 250 or something like that. So I might tweak that just a little bit further to get the complete and utter right sound. But as I'm just about to demonstrate, you'll see that there's not much difference. So without further ado, let's just turn this loop off for a second, and we'll play the actual song. So here's the bass from the song. Okay, and here's the one that I'm currently using. So as you can hear, straight out of the box, it kind of just works. The other manipulation I've done on this is just brought down the volume a little bit, and I'm going to tweak the volume as we go through. Once again, as more tracks are added, this volume will change. What I tend to like to do with all my mix, now if I bring up the mixing channel and you can see where I'm at so far, what I tend to do with all my mixes is, rather than pushing up the volumes, I tend to bring them down. That being the exception of the FX, of course. For some reason that's gone a bit wafty. Oh no, that's because that is being automated. So if I came back a little bit, you'll see that actually comes down. That's being automated, and that's the only reason it's gone really high. It just required it. But as you can see from all of these, the general practice should be to bring the volume down first and then gradually push it up. What we're really aiming to do is, when we get to the mastering stage, leaving ourselves enough headroom, maybe 2 or 3 decibels of headroom, so we can apply our limiters and we can apply our multiband compressor. So it's really important that you guys leave enough headroom throughout your track to get that right. So if I show you where I'm currently at with the actual mix itself, and you'll notice that there's a lot of headroom. See, the bass comes up, it's still below 0 dB, and as I go through, I'm going to adjust all of these volumes until they match the actual track, and then the final process will be to actually master that. Now back to the bass. The bass is going to sit in the center of the mix. This is really so that it can fatten out the sound of the bass drum, and it can also accentuate the vocals. The bass drum, the bass guitar and the vocals are pretty much the only instruments that sit dead center of the mix pretty much for all the time, and that's really because the bass drum and the bass will not sit on any of the frequencies where the voice is. That's important to keep in your mind when you're doing the panning and when you're doing all the EQ. So we're not going to lose any space for the vocal if we leave the bass and the bass drum in the middle. what we're then trying to do when we're merging our frequencies, we're then trying to kind of mix the bass drum and the bass, so they're kind of almost acting like one part. So you almost can't tell the difference between the bass drum and the bass. If I just solo the bass and the bass drum, and it's not quite there yet, remember we're actually going to do a bit more further editing to the drums. So I haven't done any editing to the drums yet, but later on in these lessons we'll actually separate all these drums out and I'll add my EQ to the drums, and then they're going to match the bass. But that's what we're looking at. So here it is so far. As you can hear, the bass drum still needs a bit more reverb and it needs a bit more EQ, and I can probably just bring the level up a little bit. Once we get there, that's what we'll be aiming for the bass and the bass drum to kind of be working as one. Next thing then, so when we're inputting these notes, the bass is going to be a really good instrument to record in live. It's very, very simple. There's only, I think, 4 notes, so it's very, very simple. Most of the notes are long, so you can, if you're not that confident with playing, you can actually just play one note at a time, move on, press, use your step input if you like, or use your punch in and punch out signals to kind of do one note at a time if you want, or you can do 4 bars at a time. Practice the notes first and then come to it. Now, if we look at the piano roll, you're going to notice that the first F sharp is F sharp 2, above this C2, okay? The lowest it goes is in the verse, it goes down to F sharp 1, okay? So you're sticking within these regions. So for the intro, you've got F sharp 2, and for the verse, you've got this F sharp 1. Okay, so when you're reading the bass clef, you need to just remember that they're not the same notes as the treble clef firstly. You need to keep in your mind at these 3 sharps, which are C sharp, F sharp, and G sharp. So whenever you see a G, or whenever you see a C, or whenever you see an F, they're the sharp, so they're the black notes rather than the white notes on the keyboard. Now, how you can kind of remember how to read the bass clef is each of these little spaces here. So the bottom space above this note here is an A, so it's all cows eat grass. So each of the spaces, all cows eat grass. And if you were doing the treble clef, you would do F-A-C-E, face. So just a nice little thing to remember, and then you can kind of work it out from there. If you do need a bit of help with your music theory, please go and have a look at our piano course, because we do discuss this a little bit in that course, just to help you guys out a bit. So they're all long notes. These last for a whole bar. The tricky bit is you've got these tied notes. If I come to this one, you can see it. Tied notes just basically means it goes on for longer than a bar. So they're tied together. It's not a slur because you can see it's on the same note. So it's tied together all the way, including this one, but not including this one. So this D note goes all the way through, almost 2 bars, and then the last 2 squares you're going to use for this F sharp. Okay, that's pretty much as complex as the notes get. Another thing that you're going to want to do is have a look for the repeating sections. So apart from the verse, which I've coloured in these blues, I've used different shades because they are ever so slightly different. There's not many that actually can be a straight repeat. This one here and this one are almost a straight repeat, but they're slightly different. This one, the chorus and chorus 2 are a repeat of each other, so you can make sure you repeat that. One thing I've been noticing about Logic when I go through is if I use my Alt button and move the segment around to copy it, so Alt click drag will copy it. What I've been doing is I've not got Snap set up properly, I've got it on divisions. The best way of doing this is when you're copying parts is make sure you've got something like beat selected, and that way when you're moving it around you will drop it onto a beat. Okay, what I've been doing is I haven't been using beats, and I've been doing this overlap. Now what you're going to notice if it's overlapping is you're going to come to this part and you say, oh my goodness, it's also wrong, I've got to re-input it. And a lot of my students have been having this problem. This one I'm bringing it up now is, oh my god, it's in the wrong place, I'm going to have to redo it. But it's not. What's happening is you've just dropped the copy into the wrong place. So what I've had to do is put my playhead on the bar itself, zoom in, and then move it. But by this time, what you're going to notice, is that on the bar? Let me just turn that back to divisions again so we can actually get it on the bar. what you're going to notice is, yes, it's on the bar now. Still not on the bar. Zoom in a bit further. There we go. And you've seen all those notes have moved around, but we've lost this one. So what you can do is either extend it. If that's not right, let's just see if that's right. So I'm going to press Control Z a few times until it gets back to normal, just to see if it was right. Yeah, so just by extending that, it will get this one back to normal, because it will, if you overlap it, it will cut it off, okay? So that was a little problem that a few of my students have been having. Okay, the next thing we're going to look at is comparing and contrast. If you're not happy with the sound you've got because you're using maybe Cubase or maybe one of the other software, or just you're using Logic 9, because I'm not sure that a few of these sounds are in Logic 9. So if you're not completely happy and you have to feel that you have to go through and check out some other sounds, a really good practice, and I've said this in a couple of lessons now, a really good practice is to set up your loop and keep going over it until you get the right sound and you get the right rhythms, okay? So what I've just done here is I've selected my bass sound. I'm going to press play, but I'm going to mute my one, and I'm just going to solo the actual song, okay? And what I should be able to see is, to make sure I've got the rhythm right, I should be able to hear the note play as it goes through, just to make sure I've got it right. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so all my rhythms are right, and if they were different, you're going to want to change that. Now, there's a couple of changes. If you write this out from the score, you're going to see that there's a few changes. Now, my bar 61, and remember, for the moment I'm including the actual pre-intro, which I'm not going to include when I do the final mix down. But for now, my bar 61, which could be different from yours, let's just find bar 61, which is here. From the score, it's ever so slightly different, okay? I've done this change already, so you're not going to notice any difference. But what I've found, I think it's either here or here, that there is a silence, okay? I think the actual original, it shows it coming out here and there's no silence. But now, if I press play... Love is running out of time. I won't count the hours, rather be a coward when I work. Yeah, there it is. There's a nice little drop there that actually isn't in you out before I lose my mind. And I can't emphasize enough actually doing this process, playing the song over your track where you can actually see the piano roll. This process is just so important to get those rhythms right. And remember, there's 8 marks for getting the rhythms right. So if you just mess up a little bit, you're going to start to lose those marks. So spending a bit of time just making sure the rhythms are right, making sure the pitches are right, because you get another 8 marks for the pitches, and that includes making sure the octaves are right. So if it's meant to be F sharp 1 and you've got it on F sharp 2, you're going to lose marks for that. So make sure those things are right as well. The next thing that I was discussing is actually making sure you've got the sound, the timbre right. Once again, play the song and then do the compare and contrast. So mute that one and then unmute your one. It's quicker on the way back, you can just press solo. Here we go. And you can see that those timbres are almost identical. Okay, so as said previously, it's a good idea to play this one in. However, if you're not feeling particularly confident with playing this in, there's a little trick. I'm going to show you guys a little trick. Something that's going to save you, as a non-musician, is going to save you a mountain of time, okay? What we're going to do is we're going to select all of these bass parts. We're going to zoom everything in so we can see them. Okay, and if you're using Cubase, you've got exactly the same functions. Okay, so don't worry if you're different between Cubase and Logic, or Logic 9 and Logic 10. You've got exactly the same functions. What you're going to do in both programs is come up here and go to your pointer tool. You need to make sure that you select every single note. Okay, for this to work, you need to make sure press every single note. It's important to remember that sometimes this doesn't work, and sometimes you will need to tweak it, okay? So here's the trick. Playing it in is going to give you two things. It's going to give you lots of different velocities, which are going to sound more human. It's going to sound more played in. It's going to sound more real. And secondly, it's going to waver ever so slightly from the actual beats. It's going to give you that kind of nice, kind of real feel. Another way in which you can get that is by using this trick. Come up to Functions, go down to MIDI Transforms, and then go to Random Velocities, okay? You can also use Humanize. Now, Humanize does two things. Humanize does the velocities and it does the kind of taking it away from the grid a little bit. You can definitely have a play with these, and you should. The one I'm going to use, because it doesn't really need a lot of humanizing, you might want to use that on the actual vocal parts, but like I say, it needs a bit of tweaking, but nowhere near as much tweaking if you was to go in and do each one by hand. So we're going to come up to here, do Random Velocities. Now we'll get this big screen here. Now it's going to say something like the top velocity in MIDI is 127. So this number here will probably say 127, and this bottom number will say something like 40. Now that is a massive difference. This bass part does not need a massive difference. It just needs a slight difference. Okay, so the random velocities I'm using, and I've kind of gone through this and worked this out in advance, is 90 and 75. When I was inputting this, just kind of typing all the notes in, it came back at 80. So I've just said, okay, I want it slightly lower. So I could even change this to 70 if I wanted to, but 75 is what I want because I didn't really want it any quieter than that. And I didn't want it any louder than 90. So it still sounds smooth, but it gives me a bit of realism, okay? Once you've done this, you're going to press, because you've selected everything, you're going to press Select and Operate. And it says here, 81 events over 10 regions. If you count up my bass regions, you'll see there's 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, once you've done that and you've pressed that button and this message has come up, come down here. Now, you won't see it on mine because I've already done this in advance. But if we look at this, you're going to see that they're different shades of green. Okay, and that's just basically the velocity's been done for you. Now, just so you can see that for real, let's come back in and let's go. Let's do velocity because the humanizer is no real control over this. So whichever. You do get the randomizing, but the one I want for this one is the actual velocity control, okay? So rather than do that, let's change it to 127, and you're going to see some red notes now, and 40. So this is extremes, okay? Come out of that, and there you go. You've got these randomly generated numbers. If you've gone that extreme, this one here is going to sound pretty awful. So here we go. Okay. Yeah, not massively impressed with that one, so I'm going to come out of that one, go back to my other one, and that's exactly as I want it. Now, that's pretty much all I'm going to do for this bass one. In the lesson, I will give you some screenshots of the kind of structures that I've used, just so you can actually help you out a little bit. I haven't done all of the changes, so you are going to have to work out some of these rhythm and note changes. There are a few more to do, and in my final version they will be there, but I don't want to give too much away. But there's a couple more that I need to do, and to find them, it's dead easy actually. Just listen through to the whole track with this window open, with this song playing, your song muted, so solo this song, and you'll hear them changes, okay? Okay, now it's your turn, so crack on.